Hi, everybody. Really great work so far on your explorations of risk ratios and odds ratios. Most of you have already looked at some kind of confounding factor, not everybody, by looking at a stratified risk ratio. So I'm going to delve into that further because you may have looked at one, for example, male versus female, and you really will want to look at other possibilities. So I'm going to share with you how to find, for example, differences by age and ethnicity. So here I'm in the Illinois Department of Public Health website, and this is showing the results by county. So here you have age demographics, and here are some different cutoffs. So you can get the numbers by age. So you do have to make a yes/no decision whether you're interested in the older age group and the younger age group. Now you're going to see that this less than 20 age group, it's pretty crude measure, largely because the idea that children would be getting COVID was something that in the beginning of the pandemic, they really weren't considering. So, and that is probably not the group that is most interesting. In terms of policy, it's interesting in monitoring the spread, but in terms of hospitalization and the issues around mortality, it's really at the older end of the spectrum. So some aspects of the under 20 group are really interesting in terms of exposures and in terms of the rapidity of the spread. Breaking it down into subgroups, probably not quite as interesting unless it's a separate risk factor independent of the adults. Now, what we do see is, for example, in Rock Island County, essentially when schools opened, it spread at first in some of the younger age groups, but really by young, we really mean 20 and under, or even 30 and under. Sometimes the Rock Island County Public Health Department has said to me 40 and under as her definition of young. And so now you're starting to see some really young ages like infants show up in the cases. But essentially when the schools opened, what we saw is just widespread increase in cases in all the age groups. So if you're looking at Rock Island County as a whole, you can see how many are in each age group, and you can combine them together depending on whether you're interested in the 60 plus or less than 20 or something in between, depending on your interests. Okay, so then there are race demographics. And so here you have an odd thing. A lot of people don't identify as any of the categories, and that makes sense. So, and this is the reality. So when you are looking at this data, it means if you want to look at two different zip codes and you want to compare different ethnic groups to see if maybe that is a confounder, you'll want to choose two comparison groups or a comparison or a group that self-identifies one way, white, Hispanic, Black, other, and compare them to either all the rest or another group if you have enough data. Now, male-female is usually a simple dichotomization. And I shouldn't say dichotomization because, in fact, I know that Rock Island County reported individuals who self-identified as non-binary, and you see this here in the pie. Oddly enough, I don't see it so much in the zip code, so I'm not really sure what's happening there. But here you have the total cases, male, female, and so and the total cases by different ethnic groups. So this means pulling things apart and putting things back together in a different way. So you have age here, number of cases by each of these different age groups. You have male, female, and then you have different ethnic groups. So what do you do in terms of creating a risk ratio? Because it means you're going to have just part of your population represented in your risk ratio. So that means if you're going to compare, for example, Black and white, you can do that. That means you first need to create a risk ratio that reflects these two populations together and then stratify this group and this group. So you have at least one of your fellow students has done that to say, okay, I'm going to create a risk ratio of comparing these two zip codes and only the people who reported this information. And then you can stratify that again by white comparing two zip codes, or Black comparing two zip codes, or you could do Hispanic. Now, keep in mind, these definitions are really rough. So we don't really know what these definitions mean. These are self-identified reports. This is how people see themselves. We don't know what this whole green space left blank means. So a race is a really crude measure. It's not super meaningful, but it does sometimes give an idea about what's going on. So when we're looking for evidence of perhaps systemic racism, you can see some of that showing up in the data. Okay, so I'm going to skip over from the Illinois Department of Public Health to the statistics site to show you where you can find your total population number, so you know how to find your total population. So in the zip code website, it says, okay, well, for these different zip codes, you have these different populations. So for the county as a whole, you have a population of 147,546, and that can be broken down further. Male and female, you've already found that. So for the whole county, it's pretty much evenly split. And then they have breakdowns by different ethnic groups that may or may not match the pie chart you just saw. So the usual categories are in there, and you might find that there are some differences with the COVID data that you might have wanted to explore, but if you don't have the sample size to start with, the total population for that subgroup, you can't really work with it. So for example, here, it doesn't have that category of other or non-identifying, and that is an issue. And also it doesn't even have, so here we have the male-female population, it doesn't have the non-binary population, which we know exists because people are self-reporting as non-binary in the case data. Okay, now what do you do by age? And here is where you actually need to go to the 2010-2000 census comparison. If you click on that, it's going to give you broken down the total population for Rock Island County, or for whatever city you've clicked on, whatever zip code that is, by every one of these 5-year age groups. So if you decide to create your cutoff 60 and above to match the COVID data, you can add up this information to get your total. Or you can say up to 19 years if you're using the less than 20 years, and then add the rest up. So essentially, they have here broken down by 5-year age categories. And I'm just going to show you the same thing. I'm going to go back to the overview. Type in just, this is one that I'm familiar with, so grew up in Rock Island, 61201. And I'm putting this in so you can see what it looks like if you don't do the whole count. You have the total population here. And so this is the estimated current population. You have information on ethnicity here, white, Black, Hispanic, Asian, very crude estimates, but still an estimate. And then you have male population, female population for your male and female comparisons. So there you have male, female, and ethnicity. And then when you do the 2010-2000 comparison, again, just like I did for the whole county, you can go here and it gives you the number for the city of Rock Island, 61201 area code, broken down by age and even broken down by male, female, and age. Now, you don't have that level of stratification in the COVID data for the Illinois Department of Public Health, but I just wanted you to see that. Okay, I'm going to pause here, and then I'm going to open R. Okay, so now I'm switching into R, and what I'm going to do is show you that part of the script where you get an adjusted odds ratio and how you get stratified results. So first of all, this is the script that you have available, and it may not look exactly like this, and your screen may not look exactly like this if you have a Mac computer. If that's the case, you may want to set up an appointment with me. Most students have found that it's tricky to get into R and to get it going. I can certainly save you a lot of time if you make an individual appointment with me if you have any trouble. So really, it's important that you've installed this package EpiR, and every time you run this, you need to rerun the command of library EpiR. So my cursor's right there on that script. This is my script, it's on that line, and when I click on run line or selection, it's running. So it would have given me an error code. Okay, so it does give one error code. That's just reminding me that this was built under R version 4.03, so if I change my version of R, that could be a problem. Otherwise, it's loaded that package. Okay, so here is my framework. I haven't filled the numbers in here, A, B, C, and D. Because I want to leave that open for you to fill in. So when you have your 2x2 table for your odds ratio version, if you fill the A, B, C, and D numbers from your odds ratio table in here, so the A is the upper left quadrant, the B is right next to it, the C is right below A, and the D is the lower right quadrant in your 2x2 table. So those numbers, you fill those in, and if you change, so zip 1, zip 1, zip 2, zip 2. If you change all of that, it's going to make it readable for you in the future so you can see what your comparison groups are. Okay, so these are my examples, and this is Rock Island versus Peoria from the summer, and this is the A, B, C, and D of the table, so that 147,003 was the reported population size of Rock Island. And at that time, there were only 745 cases of COVID. This would have been in July at that time. So that's just to show you. So this is information that will be used. So I'll just show you how it works. Some of you have already done this, not everybody. And no panic if you haven't done it, because you can do this right at the last minute. And the function of this is that you get your risk ratios and odds ratios and your confidence intervals. But I'm asking you to do another step, and that is stratify. So I don't want to just know Rock Island versus Peoria. I want to know what it looks like for males. And I want to know what it looks like for females. You have to do both of them really to make sense of this. So I'm going to click through for males. That result is 2.64. Originally, it was 2.39. So the effect is strong in both cases, but it's a little stronger in males. What's it look like for females? There. Okay. So then it goes down to 2.28. Now, the effect is stronger in males than in females, so that's a little weird. And I probably wouldn't get an adjusted odds ratio. Usually what you do for an adjusted odds ratio is if your two stratified odds ratios or risk ratios are similar enough to be put together, you can summarize them as one measure. And you can force fit it. So if you have two separated 2x2 tables, male and female, it will give you a single weighted average using this command. It's called ADGRR, array C, and this is taking the males. So this is the 2x2 table I've named males and females. And this is saying that it's not just a 2x2 comparison, but it's a 2x2x2 comparison. In other words, it's two separate 2x2 tables. So by doing that, I'm saying, give me an adjusted risk ratio using this array, and then now give me those results. And that is the adjusted risk ratio and the adjusted odds ratio. So it gives you the crude and the adjusted from those two stratified tables. So it's taking those two stratified tables, saying what it would be if you put them together. That's the crude one, the 2.44. What is it if you pull them apart and get a weighted average? In this case, exactly identical. So that's saying that the crude risk ratio, if you put males and females together in the same risk ratio, the risk ratio is 2.44. If you separate them out and you take the weighted average of that, it's the same. In other words, stratifying doesn't correct out anything. It doesn't control for confounding. It's the same result. So the adjusted Mentel-Hensel weighted average single risk ratio that takes into account any confounding for male-female doesn't make a difference. It doesn't change anything. So essentially, this is what I'm asking you to do at the end of term. If you are not able to get this adjusted risk ratio, the Mentel-Hensel, which is a weighted average of the two, that's okay so long as you do the two stratified risk ratios so that you can compare the risk ratios that you see and make that calculation of 10%. So if you look at what is a 10% change, you would expect to see that 2.44 and then subtract out minus 0.24. The 0.24 is 10%. So that would be 2.20. If you had something less than 2.20, then you would say, oh, that made a difference. It changed the risk ratio more than 10%. Or if you saw it increase to greater than 2.68, again, it would be more than a 10% increase. In this case, it makes absolutely no difference. The adjusted Mentel-Hensel correcting out for male-female differences and the risk ratio has no impact. So we can say that male-female is not a confounder in our comparison of Rock Island and Peoria. So that is the story on adjusted risk ratios. You do the same thing. For example, if you're looking at older age group versus younger, you can use your cutoff of 20 or of 60, depending on where you want to see that relationship. And you can also do the same process by creating stratified groups, for example, comparing Hispanic population to Black population, white population to Black population to Asian population, white population to Asian population, any comparison you think might be relevant to COVID-19 and you're interested in exploring, and if you have the numbers. So if you're working in a small community, if that is your area of interest, you're probably going to be limited to the data you have. And that's a real life scenario. When you do a data analysis and you only have a few hundred participants, there are only so many different things that you can explore in your data set. And this is a very real life example of that. Okay, I hope that was helpful to you, and I'm just going to post this and let you explore. I'm not editing this, it's just some additional information to help guide you through the process as you explore issues of confounding. Good luck, and thanks for the results you're looking at. It's really amazing what you guys are doing. The discussion forum is incredible. Please keep up the good work. Thanks a lot. Bye.